So I was interpreting, and there was a man in his 60s, talking about how he lost his wife and his 3 sons after an airstrike. So he was saying that his wife was in one of those rooms, and the room was hit by a rocket. So one of his sons went to see what happened. There was another strike, and the son was killed. So the 2 other sons rushed into the room to try to rescue their loved ones. But there was a third strike, and the 2 other sons were also killed. In the final analysis, this old man lost all members of his family. Luckily, he was at a distance. I mean, he was not in the area that was directly hit. So he was telling this story, and I was listening to him. We were working in consecutive. We did not have the bidul at the time. And I looked into this guy's eyes. He did not cry. He did not panic. But when you look at his eyes, you can see all the sorrow in the world, but at the same time, all the dignity in the world. So I threw my pad on the floor and ran out. And 2 of the security guys ran after me. And I burst into tears. I cried my eyes out. So did the 2 security guys.
Il s'agit souvent de missions à caractère assez sensible, où l'on accompagne le rapporteur spécial et son assistant sur le terrain. Ça peut impliquer des sujets comme la torture, les conditions de détention, les exécutions, une situation de conflit, par exemple, dans un pays donné.
Some of them are investigative. Those are the missions that are mandated by the Human Rights Council. Investigative, like, for example, under a commission of inquiry. You go to one particular country and you investigate a particular situation that is pertaining to violations of human rights.
So you accompany either a special rapporteur, an independent expert, or a few experts, and they will, in the country, have interviews with government, with civil society, with NGOs, and see if what the government says matches with what civil society or victims say, to see if the country or the authorities of the country are fulfilling their human rights obligations.
Estas son misiones muy especializadas porque los temas son temas jurídicos bastante específicos y casi siempre tienen que ver con tratados internacionales de derechos humanos, de manera que hay que tener un muy buen conocimiento de los tratados mismos, hay que tener un buen conocimiento de cómo funcionan Naciones Unidas, se necesita conocer muy bien el vocabulario jurídico especializado y, dependiendo de la misión en cuestión, además, hay que prepararse justo antes de ir al país de la visita. Tiene uno que enterarse muy bien de cuál es la situación política que ha pasado en los últimos tiempos, cuáles son las instituciones que el relator o el visitante quiere ir a interrogar. Y, por supuesto, tiene uno que conocer muy bien la cultura en general de los países.
These experiences were extremely enriching, and just as they were enriching, they were very challenging.
Lo que suele suceder es que los expertos sospechan que algo va muy mal en el país y piden ir a visitarlo. Entonces el país o acepta o a veces se niega. Una de las recomendaciones que siempre le hacen a los países es que tengan las puertas abiertas para este tipo de visitas temáticas.
You come out of your comfort zone, we come out of the booth, and we meet people face-to-face. Work is often in consecutive or chuchotage, contrary to what we're more used to at the UN, which is simultaneous.
Obviously, the circumstances, the working conditions are very rarely optimal. You often work with a bidule, what we call a bidule, a mobile interpretation equipment, which is very, very practical and very useful, very effective. But it does mean that because you're not in a booth, you have to often work shutting out the noise around you, which interferes a lot. It's actually very good training though when you come back to Geneva after having done those missions. You've actually got a lot better because you've learned to really focus very hard while you've been using the bidule.
This is perhaps our only chance to be on the ground working with professionals, being in a country and being able also to see what the real situation is. It is a very interesting, as I said, experience. We learn many things that we never actually learned sitting in meetings where we have fairly standardized, formalized approaches to discussing subject matters. This is real-time, real-life work that also keeping in mind the fact that we, together with a special rapporteur, obviously, to whom we are assistants, we're trying to find out what the true situation is and if indeed this somehow leads to improving the human rights situation in the country.
It's also so grueling that hours, you work such long hours, you're travelling all the time, you're jumping in and out of 4x4s in the heat, you haven't had any lunch, you probably didn't have time for breakfast, but it's so exhilarating as an interpreter. You really get to interpret such a range of speakers and on such a range of topics, and you get to really see what these rights mean that we talk about all the time in the booth.
La tarea de visitas de misiones de derechos humanos consiste en trabajar en equipo. Trabajar en equipo me parece crucial. Confiar plenamente en tu colega, es decir, que tú y tu colega sois lo mismo, que los dos podéis hacer exactamente lo mismo y pasaros las funciones en momentos de agotamiento o en bajones de estamina, porque uno se agota de repente, ¿no? O se satura y que el colega pueda retomar lo que tú has hecho hasta ese momento y tener plena confianza, dar ánimos a la gente, ser positivo y solidario. Esto me parece fundamental.
What is very enriching is that you meet people who have incredible courage, who, having gone through terrible things, continue to fight for what they think they believe is justice, for themselves, for their relatives, for their people, for their country, and they're admirable. And it's a chance to meet extraordinary people that few of us ever have a chance to meet.
One of the greatest advantages of having gone on missions like that is that when a country that you have visited speaks in the Human Rights Council or comes to appear before a treaty body, you know the issues, you know exactly what they're talking about, you know the names. They might even mention in a meeting the mission that you were on, so you know exactly what the issues are, and you're much less likely to say anything that is inaccurate.
Et donc cette préparation préalable, notamment de la compréhension, je dirais, de la géographie, de l'histoire et de la politique du pays, c'est très important. La géographie parce que souvent on est amené à voyager, l'histoire parce que sans comprendre l'histoire on ne peut pas comprendre le contexte d'aujourd'hui, et évidemment le contexte d'aujourd'hui en lisant la presse, en sachant quelles sont les différentes parties, mettons, impliquées dans un conflit, ou peut-être quels sont les éléments sur lesquels il se peut qu'il y ait des accords entre le rapporteur spécial et les autorités.
It's also important to understand from the assistant of the special rapporteur what exactly they're looking for, what they're trying to establish, what their main concerns are, so that you know beforehand what to expect in the visit. And of course, read up about the country, read up if you have access to the names of people you're going to meet. Like in some cases we met with famous activists, I read up about them, I hadn't heard of them, but you know, they had won awards, they had done specific things, they had served time in prison. the more information you have, the easier the work is and the better prepared you are psychologically also.
The whole work process is basically on a non-stop basis. There's no time to rest except a brief time at night, and we do our work from very early in the morning to late at night.
Il est important de ne pas faire le difficile. Il est important d'être endurant, je dirais que ça c'est très très important. On peut travailler de très longues heures.
Cuando estamos en misión de derechos humanos, el tiempo es limitado. Todo el mundo quiere hacer lo máximo, tanto el que visita como el que recibe la visita, porque el que va a la visita quiere enterarse de lo máximo posible. ¿Y a través de quién lo va a hacer? A través del intérprete. Y los que reciben la visita quieren contarle a ese relator de Naciones Unidas que ven como el salvador en muchos casos, quieren contarle todo. Y todo eso se va a hacer a través de los intérpretes.
You might have arrived late, you might be taking malaria medication, which often has unwanted side effects. I would say you also need to make sure, like nightmares for example, I'd say you also need to make sure that you have some Imodium with you, some paracetamol with you. They're kind of basic first aid medication, bottles of water as well, all that kind of making sure that you're physically in as good a state as you can be, because only you can control that. You can't control the outside, you can't control the speakers or the environment or the travel, but you can control how well you feel to a certain extent, and obviously doing everything you can do to avoid having upset stomach, that kind of thing, because interpreting with diarrhea in the middle of a field isn't ideal, speaking from personal experience.
The key really, but these are beyond your control, the key is you need to eat enough, you need to sleep enough, and you need to not fall ill. And if you can have all those three, it's a piece of cake, really.
What I would recommend as preparation for human rights missions is one, to establish a good working relationship with the assistant of the special rapporteur. Get an idea beforehand of the program. Try to make sure within the program that there is some break for lunch every day. They don't think of it usually, but it is important. And if you can't get a break, make sure you have a snack with you. That's what I usually have, either an apple or a fruit bar or something, because sometimes it can get very long or you spend a lot of time on the road also.
Il m'est aussi arrivé d'être dans des situations où, vu le contexte culturel local, le rapporteur, qui était de genre masculin, ne pouvait pas facilement avoir accès aux femmes. Donc là, il m'a pratiquement donné le rôle de rapporteur à jouer auprès des femmes. Et c'est là qu'on se rend compte à quel point il faut bien connaître le mandat et être prêt à poser les bonnes questions. Bon, évidemment, on entend le rapporteur travailler, donc on sait plus ou moins ce qui l'intéresse, mais c'est quand même important aussi d'être préparé et de connaître le contexte et les problématiques.
So, human rights missions are riddled with hardships. There are many challenges, depending on the country. Some of these challenges can be security challenges, safety challenges. Some of them are life-threatening. And others are riddled with emotions.
Another element that is profoundly challenging, as I said, is the psychological element, because you meet with people who have directly suffered enormously in human rights missions, or indirectly. For instance, there was one case in a commission of inquiry where there was a woman who spoke about how her son was burnt alive, and it was a testimony. And of course she was crying most of the time. Even the judges, members of the commission of inquiry, were in tears, and I had to keep it together because I wanted to be her voice and I wanted to be heard. And so sometimes you keep it together, you hold back because you want to be a professional, but afterwards it stays inside you, it doesn't come out, and that is very difficult.
Il est important aussi de pouvoir faire preuve de compréhension et d'empathie, quand on parle à une victime, mais en même temps, il faut être prêt à éviter à tout prix de se substituer à la personne qu'on est en train d'interviewer. Et ça, c'est important parce que on est confronté à des situations difficiles, on entend des récits très durs, et si on a tendance à se substituer à la personne qui est interviewée, on peut subir un stress beaucoup plus important que si on garde une certaine distance. Et ça, en faisant beaucoup de missions droits de l'homme, on apprend à le faire.
Bon, l'expérience peut être éprouvante parce qu'il faut établir un équilibre entre un travail fidèle, bien fait, et tout en gardant ses distances, de ne pas s'impliquer trop. Et c'est ça qui constitue un défi pour un interprète. Parce qu'il y a des émotions qui sont interprétées, et l'interprète, il est en première ligne.
The emotions and feelings that one has during the mission when you're dealing with issues, questions related to human suffering. This is something that obviously has an impact on everything you do, and it also gives you additional responsibility in order to do your work in the best possible way in these very difficult conditions, because when you're on a special rapporteur mission, rules really do not apply. Those standard rules that we have as interpreters, there are certain limited hours, you have your lunch break. No.
Cette expérience passe par un premier filtre qui agit comme un parachoc pour un véhicule, qui absorbe ce premier choc et après il est amené à le reformuler tout en gardant l'essentiel du message et passer le message au rapporteur.
What happens on these missions is that you interview a lot of people who suffered a lot. So they tell you some pretty horrendous stories. Now, I think we have a defense mechanism that kicks in, which enables us to distance ourselves and to not get involved emotionally. And I think that's a good thing, because if you get too involved emotionally, you can't really interpret, because you might burst into tears, or you might get angry against the people who did the things to the people you're interviewing.
You are the only person who understands the language of the victim and who can assess the gravity and the depth of the emotions that are being expressed by the victim. So you absorb that, you filter that, and you put it in nice words.
It's not just the difficulty of having been face to face with so much suffering, it's also the guilt of leaving people behind. Now, when you're an interpreter, and the fact that you speak using I was beaten, I was raped, it adds more of a, in my opinion and in my case, an identification with the victim.
Souvent dans ces situations, on a des entretiens, des interviews avec les personnes. Souvent après, comme vous parlez la langue de la personne, la victime a tendance à s'approcher de vous et à commencer une sorte de petite conversation privée avec l'interprète. Et la question qu'ils posent souvent ces gens, c'est: est-ce que vous pensez que vous allez vraiment pouvoir nous aider? Est-ce que l'ONU peut faire ceci, cela, cela? Très très important de ne pas susciter des espoirs non fondés auprès de ces gens.
I have been in situations where the expert has told me, filter what I say. In other words, if I say something that is not entirely appropriate, I trust you to phrase it in such a way that it will be acceptable to the people who are listening to me. Once again, I'll say it for the third time, I'm not advising this as a professional principle, but there are times where, as somebody who understands how the message is going to be perceived, you sometimes need to slightly adapt what is being said, either to avoid offence being caused, or ensure that the discussion is productive.
Momentos en que los entrevistados se han echado a llorar, hombres robustos y fornidos que han llorado, han colapsado delante de esta situación de tener que contar cómo les han explotado laboralmente, cómo el jefe de la empresa que les tenía allí encerrados quería abusar de su mujer, contando todas aquellas intimidades. El tipo se puso a llorar Y desde luego yo era como una especie de espejo, intentaba ser el espejo de aquello, ¿no? O sea, claro, uno no puede dejar que la voz se le quiebre cuando está interpretando, pero la relatora veía perfectamente la situación, era cuestión de... No sé, es como si fueses el doble de aquella persona, te conviertes en una especie de prolongación del que habla, ¿no?
Faire ce travail tout en gardant ses distances. Et c'est bien là une différence avec le rôle que joue l'interprète sur une scène de théâtre, parce qu'un interprète de conférence se doit également de garder ses distances, de ne pas s'identifier à la victime. Cet équilibre entre la distance et le souci d'un travail bien fait, d'un travail fidèle, prend de l'énergie de l'interprète.
Y los intérpretes somos en cierta forma como actores, porque nosotros estamos desempeñando un papel de una persona. Entonces, si el que habla es asesino, uno no lo puede juzgar, uno tiene que hablar como si fuera ese asesino, pero mal que bien, esos sentimientos negativos dejan su huella. Entonces hay sentimientos perversos, hay sentimientos racistas, hay insultos. En muchas de estas misiones a países en dificultades y en situaciones en donde hay problemas graves, toca interpretar situaciones con este tipo de sentimientos.
One has to deal with people who have suffered, and that is obviously something that is then transmitted to us as interpreters, and these feelings do stay behind, and one has to remain calm, composed, not let your emotions take over, but at the same time it's in some way inevitable, so it comes back in the evening, at night, but the following day you just continue doing your job.
There comes a time when you feel vulnerable, either because you probably relate with this person due to a past experience, or you are of the nationality of this person. You and the victim come from the same country, so you have past emotions and a past experience that can be dug up by listening to the experience of this person, and this gets to you. And I don't think we're doctors. You see, doctors do not, or psychiatrists, are trained to shield themselves from being involved.
I found that it was a great relief for me to be able, after each workday, to have a proper chat with my interpreter colleagues, but also with the other members of the mission, talking about what happened and what we can do better the next day to avoid stress, etc. Sort of a debriefing day by day, maybe not every day, but several times at least over the week.
C'est rare qu'on se retrouve dans des situations dangereuses, parce que quand on arrive dans un pays, en général, on a un briefing très complet qui est fait par la sécurité de l'équipe de pays sur place. Les gens de la sécurité sont très bien informés, très bien formés. Ils disent exactement à quoi on doit s'attendre. Ils nous mettent en garde contre les dangers qu'on pourrait rencontrer. Et d'ailleurs, on est toujours accompagné par la sécurité onusienne. Les voitures sont blindées souvent quand on est dans des zones de guerre ou dans des pays dangereux. Et il est très, très important de suivre à la lettre les directives que nous donnent les conseillers à la sécurité, les membres de la sécurité sur le terrain.
Where we were taken, that is the special rapporteur, the assistant, me, and the other interpreter, were taken by one human rights activist in the country we were visiting to the house where there were a number of either former victims or relatives of victims of arbitrary detention or enforced disappearances. These people were very afraid of meeting with us, so that is why the human rights activists took us to them. And we suddenly realized that we were followed by Secret Service cars that had darkened glass windows, and that were clearly intimidating us, coming very close to us, behind us, and then coming in front of us. There were two cars.
Y se sublevaron y empezaron a quemar cosas. Y entonces alguien decidió traer patrullas de urgencia para sacarnos de esa cárcel de urgencia. Y fue una experiencia aterradora.
As the experts are talking, we can hear people in the small group complaining and saying things like, "It's because of you that all this happened. Who do you think we are? You think we're idiots?" So as my expert is speaking, I'm hearing this young lady saying these things, and we realize that the situation could get out of hand.
Detuvieron nuestros coches, nos hicieron salir, nos chequearon a todos, registraron nuestro equipaje, nos tuvieron separados uno de otro, encañonándonos con sus enormes ametralladoras, y yo en mi vida he tenido tanto miedo como en aquel momento.
We had been told not to take our phones so that we would not give out a signal so that they would not know where we were. So we felt very helpless. And it was an isolated area, very dark. It was very scary.
Et la personne donc a agressé verbalement le rapporteur et lui a dit qu'il n'avait absolument rien à faire là et qu'il ne devait pas s'ingérer dans les affaires qui ne le concernaient pas, alors que lui, il était là uniquement pour l'aspect droit de l'homme. Ça a causé des tensions très très fortes et le rapporteur qui voulait insister à voir certaines personnes a dit que lui, il allait rester jusqu'à ce qu'il obtienne gain de cause, mais il a donné toute liberté aux membres de son équipe de partir s'ils ne se sentaient pas en sécurité. Et là, il y a l'élément esprit de corps et esprit d'équipe qui entre en jeu, parce que sans exception, les 3 membres de l'équipe sont restés avec le rapporteur. On est restés soudés, on a dit non, pas question qu'on vous abandonne ici, on reste avec vous. Et face à cette cohésion, je pense que ça a aussi joué un rôle, parce que les gens qui étaient devant nous se sont rendus compte que l'ONU avait une mission, qu'elle tenait à cette mission et qu'elle était prête à tout pour la mener à bien.
So, what do, we interpreters? How do we cope with this kind of difficulty? Experience is key. And experience gives you the possibility to develop some kind of coping mechanism. You cope with that. I don't know, you probably, upon your return from the mission, you just evacuate all these feelings by playing music, doing strenuous sports exercises, maybe taking a hike and walking up the mountain, just cutting yourself off from the situation, and by thinking about different things, and you end up coping with these difficulties. Not all interpreters have PTSD, by the way. PTSD can happen when you accumulate hardships, difficult missions, one after the other.
Le quotidien peut être affecté par ces missions-là. Cette charge émotionnelle n'est pas toujours gérée de façon parfaite. Les personnes réagissent de façon différente au stress. Il y a également un réservoir d'émotions et de capacités dans lequel l'interprète puise pour gérer ces situations-là. Et cette capacité de gestion de crise varie d'une personne à une autre et varie aussi d'un moment à un autre.
In one case where I interpreted a torture victim for about 3/4 of an hour, who had a lot to say, I had nightmares for weeks, because what he said was very real. He described, he showed scars, he'd been burnt, all sorts of things, terrible things had been done to him. And these things stay with you.
Peut-être ceci s'explique aussi par d'autres problèmes, d'autres éléments exogènes qui viennent compliquer ces difficultés professionnelles. Aussi, il y a d'autres responsabilités, mais surtout cette capacité de la personne, de l'individu, de l'interprète à gérer le stress s'érode avec le temps et on peut puiser dans cette force. On peut résister un certain nombre d'années, mais je pense que bien heureux sont ceux qui prétendent qu'ils ont des réserves qui leur permettent de survivre tout au long de leur carrière sans qu'il y ait des effets indésirables.
So when I came back home, it was very important for me to talk to my husband or interpreters who understood very well the situation about the problems that I faced and what solutions I was able to find to share with others my experience. What I found very difficult was to come back straight to work. And I feel, especially if you come back on a Sunday and you end up working on the Monday, it's not a good idea.
It leaves a deposit of pain. There are many ways of dealing with it when you come back, and it might take a certain time. The respect and the awe you feel in front of people who sometimes have suffered so much can linger on for the longest time and can interfere with your personal life upon return. Everybody has different ways of dealing with it, be it meditation, sport. One hopes you won't fall into extreme forms of compensation. But a good suggestion, I find, is to talk it over, be it with friends, peers, your hierarchical superior, if it is someone you can relate to and in whom you may have your trust, or even in the United Nations, we have an excellent counseling service. You shouldn't shy away from contacting a professional if it might be sometimes too hard. And you know it is too hard when you have images that hit you and that won't go away for a long time. So my personal advice, if you are planning on being a professional, is just don't stick it up. Talk about it with somebody and find solutions. It is a very rewarding experience as well to have the privilege of being on first contact basis, which you can turn into a personal enrichment experience. So it should not destroy you, it should make you stronger.
Alors voilà, pour le moment, moi je gère le stress avec beaucoup de sourire. Au moins, c'est ce qui apparaît. Je ne me vante pas de ça, mais je reconnais aussi, il faut savoir reconnaître quand on a un moment de difficulté. On est des êtres humains, il ne faut pas montrer que la carapace. Il y a d'autres qui sont moins chanceux et ils ne peuvent pas garder le sourire tout le temps. Et ça affecte le milieu, le cercle professionnel, ça affecte le quotidien de l'interprète, le travail d'une équipe. L'interprète travaille binôme, il travaille dans une équipe avec beaucoup de proximité, avec une sorte d'intimité. Et à un certain moment, cette intimité peut être affectée, peut être endommagée.
So in a way you think you're not being affected because you've distanced yourself, but I think that overall over the years you're a bit like a sieve. Things pour through you, but you retain some things, and I think overall I feel that life has become a little heavier because I know more about the horrible things that are happening in certain places in the world. Now obviously I'm not experiencing those things, but you do have some kind of a psychological scar as a result of your conversations with all these people who've suffered a lot.